Hey YouTube, welcome back to the Locked In Anglers Fishing Channel. It's early spring, the fish are biting, the water's warming up, and we're here to talk to you today about our favorite springtime bait, the jerkbait.
The jerkbait is one of our favorite baits because that's how we pick up our kicker or two big kickers in a tournament. I mean, this bait just straight out catches big fish. I mean, you do catch your little ones, but man, I love these things because I've caught a lot of big fish on these, but you really have to have that specific thing to go find those fish and catch them on these jerkbaits.
Yeah, I agree. Like we spent a lot of time over the years really trying to figure out the right conditions to optimize a jerkbait. And there's a couple really key things that line up. One of them, you have to have some sort of wind. You just need something on top of the water, whether it's rain or wind, to really break up that water clarity down below so they can see this bait and not know right away that it's an artificial bait. As for the rest of the conditions, I think you can really target fish with sun or clouds. The only real difference though is it's just going to be the color of bait and the type of clarity or transparency that you're going for.
Definitely. So I'm going to talk about like the deeper jerkbaits. I like throwing these deeper jerkbaits like the Vision 110 plus 2 or the Vision 110 plus 1. Oh, we're hung up. But I love throwing these baits because in the springtime, like the fish are coming out from deep water. They're coming up to stage to go into the spawning pockets, you know. So I want to get down there just a little bit deeper where those schools of bait are going to be, you know, where the fish are going to have it trapped, just so this bait is going to act all like a wounded bait fish, you know, exactly what we're trying to mimic with the jerkbait.
Mm-hmm.
And going on what you're talking about with the weather conditions, you know, if it's sunny, I'm going to throw more of a translucent color like this Vision 110 Pro Blue. But if it's cloudy and whatnot, I like throwing the more bold white colors because this is just going to pop a little bit more, you know, and sun usually penetrates through and makes things more translucent. So like you want to be more translucent in the sun, and clouds you want to be more bold, and so things can see it a lot easier. And I just love throwing these things. I've caught many big fish on these jerk baits, and I really like throwing the deep ones, like I said, for hitting those deeper fish while they're still a little bit deeper.
Exactly, and the key for us early is throwing that mega bass, the 110 plus 1, the plus 2. They're one of the few baits on the market that really truly suspend and don't move. And that's really important as these fish will slowly come up and they'll just watch your bait for a good bit of time before they actually commit. So if you have a bait that just sits there dead still and then has an erratic action, that's usually when you can get your biggest bite. So the only other deep bait that I throw, and this is typically what we throw a little bit more for largemouth, a little bit of smallmouth, but you'll see by the hook size we kind of target both, but that's the Stacy 90, a Lucky Craft Stacy 90. This bait operates a little bit differently than the Vision 110. It's more of what we call like a pulling jerk bait.
Definitely.
So we don't hit the bait hard. We get it as deep as we can, try to get it basically where it's on the bottom, and we do these long drags with the rod to basically just get that bait to kick up almost like a crankbait and then just come back and suspend. And it's usually an early springtime deal when these fish are a little bit more lethargic. It's just a different approach that we use to target some of these fish that are seeing the jerkbaits flying over their head all day. The other jerkbaits we want to talk about is once that water temp kind of gets into that like 52, 53, those fish are up on the flats, that's when we really start going to the plus ones, and we mix in another jerkbait as well, the Jackal Re-Range. And so both of these baits have a ton of action, and we just fish them really aggressively once those fish are up shallow. We're probably 3 to 5 second pauses unless the fish are telling us otherwise. And if we want a bait that's still going to sit dead still, we'll go with that 110. Or if we want a bait that really just puts off a lot of flash, these Jackal Re-Ranges have an aluminum strip on the inside that like just catches the sunlight really well. And we'll fish this bait incredibly aggressively, like around docks and around just really shallow vegetation. Then the one other bait that we hold pretty close to the vest is the small junior, Vision 110 plus 1 junior. This bait has really saved us a handful of times when we're on a pretty good jerkbait bite and maybe the bite's fading or they're just not committing to it. We'll put this guy on a spinning rod, usually like an 852 G Loomis spinning rod, and work it just like a jerkbait, but the smaller profile. Usually we tend to use something with a chartreuse on the bottom to just really get them to target it. And this bait has just pulled together a handful of our bags when we just couldn't get them to go on the normal stuff.
So now you were saying that we fish those fast, right? But there's also times when we go slow. I mean, there's one event I remember. I was throwing this nice, lovely thing right here, and you go pop, pop, and then I would sit there and count to 10. Now he was getting impatient, so he whipped out a crankbait and was catching him on that. But this bait right here, like we said earlier, this is what produced the bigger fish in that tournament. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Agreed. I caught probably 20 fish to your 3, and all 3 of yours made the bag.
Yeah.
And so it was just a very and it had to be fish so slow.
Yeah, it was gruesomely slow.
Yeah.
But one thing that also was a big role of that, me catching those bigger fish, is so they were hitting this bait, right? They're hitting it, but not connecting. They're hitting it. I was getting them on this back hook, or I was barely getting skin hooks and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, let's give them a target. So one thing that I will do with the jerkbait, when they need something to target, I'll switch out that front hook to be a red hook, because that is something different. They always want to look at something different, and they're always going to target that little different piece. So now that front hook's up there, those fish are going to grab it more up front.
Yep.
And so I was able to get half this bait in their mouths. It really helped out.
They just started headshotting it, and the hookup ratio just went through the roof.
Yeah, it was so nice. I mean, it's one of those little things that you just got to do to help get more bites or have better connections.
Agreed. And to that point, the other modification that we always make, and you'll see it across all of our jerkbaits, particularly you'll see how a lot of our 110s don't even have hooks on them anymore. It's usually because we take the stock hooks off. The Megabass hooks, they have an outward barbed hooks. They're really sticky, but they bend out really easily. And so we always change out our hooks to these. They're the Aaron Martin's Gamakatsu G Finesse Nano hooks. And size 5 is the only size that we use. And it's because it's the exact same weight as the Megabass hooks, and balance is everything. Yeah. So to keep that bait suspending perfectly, we use that Aaron Martin's Nano hook 100% of the time. It's about 3 times stronger. It's just as sticky, and we just have so much more confidence when you have big smallmouth jumping at the boat that we're not going to lose a barb and end up losing the fish.
I mean, the only time though that we really use these Megabass hooks, because these things, I mean, guys, I can literally pinch this and I can bend every single one of these hooks. But that's good for practice, because then you can lose fish, but you still know you're sticking them, Sometimes we'll just use these because you literally lose so many fish on this. Yeah. I mean, it's mind-blowing that Megabass makes amazing baits, right? And they put high quality to it. But these hooks they have on here, man, they just cannot handle it.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Agreed. So talk me through some of the gear that you're throwing these jerkbaits on. It seems like a pretty specialized approach for this deeper jerkbait thing.
So when I throw deeper jerkbaits, I like having a stiffer rod. So I will throw it on a G Loomis 894 or 845, sorry. I'll throw it on that, and then I'll also throw it on the G Loomis 812. And I like throwing it on those rods, and I'll still give them a snap and a pull, but I'm also running that on 12 pound, 10 pound. Sometimes I'll go to 8 because I'm trying to get this down deep. So lighter line, thinner diameter, you can get it a whole lot deeper. That's what I really like doing. But I'll also have it on 6.3 to 1 just so I don't accidentally get too excited. Or if I do get too excited, I'm not reeling in too fast, because this is literally a slow presentation.
Yeah.
For me, at least the deep water stuff. I like it just having it nice and slow in their face, and then pop, pop. They love it.
Exactly. And so Travis hit on a key. So sometimes when we're fishing, so typically we're always throwing like 12 pound Sunline Sniper. That's our go-to for jerkbaits.
Yeah.
But with the deep bite, sometimes when we're trying to put ourselves in a portion of the water column that other people can't reach, we'll go all the way down to 8 pound, especially on spotted bass lakes where the fish typically aren't as big. We'll get down as deep as we can with that and go anywhere, probably about 8 to 10 pound is the lowest that will go. Anything other than that gets a little bit sketchy. And then for me, I actually use a Shimano rod. So it's a 610. It's a 610 Shimano Zodius. It's a medium action. And I always run it with a Corrado 70. The Corrado 70 is just a smaller, lightweight reel, and it's really good for casting light baits. And this rod though this is probably one of my favorite Shimano rods that they've made. It's got a really crisp action for snapping the bait, but it loads up about 2/3 of the way into the rod once you've actually stuck the fish. And it just works really well for keeping those fish buttoned and giving your bait really good action.
Now, what about like drag? How do you set your drag?
So that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
So especially when we're smallmouth fishing, these fish early in the season they go nuts.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I usually start my drag definitely not locked down, but I start it a little bit higher for that initial hook set and for when I'm actually hitting the jerkbait, so I can get a clear snapping action. But the second I get bit, after I set into that fish, I back that drag off really hard and just let that fish tire itself out, because you're talking tiny hooks, big fish. There's a lot that can go wrong there.
See, and I do a little bit different. My drag is like loose. Mine is loose, but I also, whenever I start popping, I'll always put my thumb onto that spool. I'll put my thumb onto that spool and pop, pop, just so I can get that popping action, you know. But when I do hit a fish, then it just easily slips out, because I mean, like we said, you gotta have the light wire hooks, but strong enough. But they're still light wire, so you need that drag given, you know. So because they just won't just freaking pulling on you guys. Yep. So you just want to give them everything they got. Because I love having light drag.
Yeah, no, and definitely, especially when that fish is getting anywhere near the boat, you have to let your reel handle the fish much more than you. But yeah, no, I think that just about wraps it up for everything jerkbaits. Yeah, if you guys have any questions about jerkbaits or kind of any elements that we talked about, feel free to drop a comment here, and we'll make sure to get back to you. But other than that, just get out there, enjoy that spring weather, toss a jerkbait around. You'll be pleasantly surprised with how big a fish you catch.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Tight lines.